Con ustedes, Grant Asplund, Growth Technologies Evangelist de Checkpoint.
Welcome everyone. Hi, my name is Grant Asplund. I'm with Checkpoint Software. I'm thrilled to be here. You know, Checkpoint has been working with MAPS for more than 23 years. I've had the dubious honor and privilege to speak at MAPS events in the past, and we're really thrilled and excited to have you here today for IT Solutions Day 2022. So, you know, I thought I was speaking with some of the event organizers and with Eduardo, and I have my 75 slides all ready to go that I'm going to squeeze into the next 20 or 30 minutes. But, you know, I thought, no, maybe that won't be what I'll do. Maybe what I'll do is I'll just tell you some stories and give you a chance to even maybe win some dinero, some money. So I've got a $20 bill, US, that we'll give to whoever is the first to reply with the exact correct answer and spelling of the very first acquisition Checkpoint ever made. Now today, ladies and gentlemen, think about that. By all means, if you know the answer, put it in. I've already provided the proper answer to the organizers, and so we'll make sure if any of you get it right, you'll get that $20 or what translates to it. I'll tell you, I've done this many times, and most people, I've never had anyone get it yet. Now, it's no fair to go searching. Okay, so my intention today, quite frankly, is just to tell you some stories about the history that I've had personally, but also the industry and how it's evolved, and maybe shed some light on some things you didn't know about Checkpoint software. And I'd really like to start by first asking, how many of you know what bind is? B-I-N-D. It's Berkeley Internet Name and Domain. Now, how many of you know what DNS is? And I imagine all of your hands are reaching for the sky. Of course, we all are very familiar with DNS, but not so bind. Well, back in the early days of the internet, I'm giving you a clue, by the way, on the first acquisition. Not every network had the ability to use bind or DNS to do lookups and to find things. And in order to function on the internet, we certainly had to have DNS. And this company that Checkpoint acquired was the first on the planet to port the bind code from the Unix environment to Windows. Now, I want to go back even more. I was very, very fortunate. I helped open up an Apple dealership in 1983. My claim to fame is the first Macintosh sold to Alaska Airlines and Weyerhaeuser and a handful of other companies. I had the opportunity to sell them. So I've been in the biz a long, long time. And you'll remember back before the internet, all of us were networked. We were all networked, but we were using different networks. You were using Token Ring. I was using Banyan Vines. Someone else was using Lantastic. Someone else was using IPX. Someone else was using Windows. So we really didn't look at security in the same context, in the same way that we look at it today. In fact, it largely was summed up by saying antivirus, spam filter. Those were the kinds of things that were protecting and securing our environments, or that at least what we were thinking about. Okay, well, so we're all kind of safe in our own little fishbowl, worried only about what's happening in that fishbowl. And then we all got invited to the internet. And the way I describe it, ladies and gentlemen, it was like we were all invited to Woodstock. You know, that big concert party 50, 60 years ago. I mean, clothing optional. Come on, free love. You can see anything, do anything, go anywhere. It's the internet. Well, little did we know that this would literally become the core backbone for every business on the planet. But what occurred at that very instant is as we, now you'll remember this when you were using Lantastic or Token Ring or IPX or one of these other networks. In order to get onto the internet, you literally had to buy the stack, the TCP/IP stack from companies like Chameleon and others. So you get into and onto the internet, and in order to find anything on the internet, you type in some English, www. But the internet speaks in IP addresses. So DNS provides that for us, right? We do our search, our lookup, it resolves. So if you don't have a DNS for your network, you're not going to be functioning very well on the internet, not on a TCP/IP network. So this was when, and I'm telling all of you this, ladies and gentlemen, because it really will come together on understanding that we got a CEO. In fact, our CEO, Gil Schwed, invented the firewall. He's the longest running CEO of any other NASDAQ company today. And you know, this very first acquisition that I talked about, I explain it to you because I want you to understand this world before Active Directory. When today we're all talking about zero trust and least privilege, but I want to explain the orchestration, the architecture that was envisioned by the original founders when we were acquired in April of 1998. Now, kind of got a bunch of little starts going, but I think it'll all come together. So it was on the 15th of April, 1998, that Shlomo Kramer, some of you may be familiar with that name, one of the original co-founders of Checkpoint, came to Seattle and announced that Checkpoint had just acquired this company. We had about 36 employees total. Our 36 employees pushed Checkpoint's total employee count to something like 415, 420. It was about 147 million annually in revenue. And you have to understand, before Active Directory, in these very early days, let me explain what was going on and why Gil and Shlomo and the others, I think, had this vision. So DNS, we already covered. But the pain in the rear for those building out TCP/IP networks is everything was an IP address. We all know that, right? But it was all manual. Everything was manual. The assignment of the addresses was manual. All of the resolution would be handled in DNS, but the entries, all manual. And enter DHCP. I'm sure many of you are familiar with this, Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. This is that first layer of software, layer 2 to 3, where your device comes onto the physical network and broadcasts, or the wireless, hey, is there a DHCP server out there? And what's really amazing is the RFC states that a DHCP server must respond to a broadcast for Discover. And the amazing thing about that is this is my network, but if you walk into it, and this was the problem we had, right? You walk in carrying your sewing machine laptop compact, but you've got a cord and you want to plug into my network. You find a hot jack on the wall. If you've got a virus, now it's on my network. This was the early days of what we had to start to think about as we went into this world called TCP/IP and the internet. And subsequently, everyone's fishbowl disappeared, right? When you're in your own protocol of banyan vines or token ring, that's what I mean by a fishbowl. But when we go into the internet, I liken it to one big, massive ocean. And you're with both predator and prey. So what happens is everyone on the planet, as they moved into the ocean, as they moved into the internet, they wanted to recreate that fishbowl. And that was the firewall. And that really was the beginning of the bubble and when everything really took off. And I want to make sure everyone knows, it's Checkpoint software. And the first distribution of Checkpoint was actually through an OEM relationship with Sun and was distributed on a diskette and then later a CD. So Checkpoint is a software company and remains that way still today. Okay, so now everybody's getting firewalls. And again, you'll remember in the early days, how did we write policy for a firewall in those days? Back then it was, a source, destination, service, action, right? And I needed to know, hey, Eduardo, what's the IP address? Okay, hey, Grant, what's the IP address? Hey, everything is IP address, source, destination. And that was because everything was static, right? DHCP came in and administrators loved it because now at least my network would be dynamically addressed. DHCP violates zero trust, right? But that's another story. So now administrators are thrilled, but the problem is I get an address, but people can't find me because I'm not able to get resolved in DNS, enter dynamic DNS, DDNS. And so now the circle's complete on the DNS side. I get a dynamic address. My host name is registered in DNS with this particular IP address. I can be found and I can resolve. Okay. Now let's jump back over to the policy editing. And the reason I'm explaining all of this to you, again, this is all before Active Directory. And the vision Checkpoint had, Gil had, Shlomo had, was, to drive security all the way down to that very first layer of software in the TCP/IP stack. That's where it would start. And it would start based on me. And so this acquisition of this first company on the planet that ports bind to Windows and now has a DNS and DHCP and IP address management software, this vision was to tie that into the policy so that I no longer had to say, hey, what's the IP address for Grant? What's the IP address for Eduardo? Now I literally would be able to put in the sources at Eduardo, the destination at Grant, or Grant at, I guess would be the proper nomenclature, but you get my point. It's now at an individual, that's zero trust, right? It's me, it's Eduardo, or it's another very specific device or service. In addition to the ability to define policy based on this, the ability to have what's called weighted fair queuing, quality of service, to adjust and manage and prioritize bandwidth and packets, all tied into that same security policy and stack. This, ladies and gentlemen, this was what we had in 1999, about a year after the acquisition, with the variety of products, all software products, mind you. And for those of you that guessed Nokia, you're wrong. That was only about 10 years ago. And oh, by the way, for those of you that guessed zone alarms, wrong. That there's another one even before that that you may have guessed, and it's not right either, SofaWare. So I'm giving away the multiple choice options, narrowing the field. Hopefully you're figuring out who it is, or you'll know eventually. So the reason, there's quite a bit of talk and discussion about the evolution of the industry today. We've got SASE, we've got ZTNA, we've got zero trust in general, we've got IoT, and all of these, not to mention, by the way, cloud, right? I mean, the cloud in and of itself has expanded so much. Just a personal note, I was part of that company, that one of the 36 that was so fortunate to be acquired by Checkpoint in 1998. And I was with the company for better than 4 years, and actually bought the company back, but that's a whole nother story. Did a number of other things, but I went to work for my dear friend Zohar Alan. Some of you may know him. He was the co-founder of Dome 9, and I worked with Zohar at Checkpoint in my original, or I should say, first round with the company. Well, I had the wonderful benefit of taking on the principal evangelist role for Dome 9, and deja vu occurred about 20 years later. Less than 3 months later, Checkpoint acquired us, and I found myself back with Gil and all the terrific people that are still around, and all the amazing new people that Checkpoint has, and a portfolio that's went from a dozen to now more than 80 different products, all of which you can go to a software portal, manage and configure policy for everyone. Remarkable. Yes, we do own Nokia, so we do have hardware, but again, I'm going to stress it, ladies and gentlemen, we're a software company, and we're very proud of that. So I wanted to share this vision with you so you can understand and appreciate that we got the same CEO sitting at the helm with the same vision of unifying this threat intelligence. Now, again, back then, what we've seen this evolution from the original Gen 1, which was just antivirus, to now we're into the Gen 5, Gen 6, multifaceted, heavy-duty attacks, and we're seeing them all the time. And, it was Gil that predicted what we call the Gen 5 attacks. And we've seen them. Colonial Pipeline. It doesn't take, there are so many, I can't even think of them at first. JBS, numerous and countless others, and they're happening all the time. And I think that we have to understand and appreciate that we no longer have a number of individual threads that we need to secure, but we've truly woven a cyber fabric. Our environments are very complex and span from end users using personal devices, mobile devices, public devices. They're at home, they're at the office. We've got remote offices. We have cloud, and the cloud is just expanded in so many ways, from the traditional network security you just absolutely have to have if you move into the cloud, to posture management, to compliance, to workload protection, API protection, and continuing to shift left into securing the developers as they code. All of this is happening now. And then, of course, the traditional network that we've continued to have to secure. All of these things have evolved and expanded. And Checkpoint, I just have to stress, I don't want to make this too much of a pom-pom shake, but ladies and gentlemen, I want to leave you with this. Checkpoint's now well over 25 years old. We invented the firewall, have a patent on stateful inspection. We don't enforce it. It's pretty remarkable the influence this company has had on the industry. Just look around at the countless number of startups that have come to fore as a result of spending time working, learning, and sharpening skills at Checkpoint. And we're proud of that. And it continues to drive the industry. It's really, really exciting. Now, let's talk about one thing I'd like each of you to do as you ponder your next move or your architectural strategy for securing your environment. We no longer have individual threads. We truly have a fabric. We need security architectures that mirror this fabric, that give you the threat intelligence across the entire environment, not only broad, but deep. This is absolutely imperative. And the other thing, and this is what I'd like you to check out, when we go and we seek out security solutions to secure our environments, one of the absolute most critical metrics or measurements we should be looking at is how secure are those companies' products. So I challenge you to do, ladies and gentlemen, is look up the 5 or 6 leading vendors that you use. Look up the 5 or 6 leading vendors you could consolidate to, because that's a critical strategy for companies today. Look up the performance of those companies. And the performance I want you to check is the number of CVEs that have been released for that company's products, the time it takes for those CVEs to be addressed and fixed, and rest assured, the total number over the duration or life of the company. Take a look at that data, because when you're selecting solutions, companies, to protect your environment, I suggest that one of the most important metrics is how they view security of their own tools. And I can assure you, no one performs better, but I'm going to have you check that out on your own. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, no hard sales pitch. We're just probably a lot more than what you think we are. And what I'd love to encourage you to do, please, we don't sell direct. We do not sell. We only go through partners. So go find your MAPS partner and have them give you a briefing on who Checkpoint is today. If you've not had that high-level overall briefing in the last 6 months, you're out of date. And you'd be well served to see how Checkpoint is continuing to provide the very best security available. So with that, I want to thank you all very, very much. I hope you have a terrific conference, Solutions Day, IT Solutions Day 2022. And thank you all very, very much for your time.
Agradecemos a Gran Asplund por su participación en el IT Solutions Day. Ayúdenos a responder esta rápida encuesta.